It's interesting to see over 85% of all AI initiatives fail because of poor data quality and governance. Garbage data leads to flawed insights and wasted investment. Corinna Zennig helps organizations move from data chaos to data confidence. She leads a consultancy that transforms messy e-commerce data into actionable insights. She simplifies analytics so leaders can make faster decisions without the noise. Corinna is on the show today to discuss why AI is only as good as your data. We talk about foundations of responsible AI adoption. Let's welcome our guest, Corinna Zennig, and my co-host, Jocelyn Q. Thanks, Corinna. Welcome back. How are you doing today?
Very good. Thanks, Nat, for having me.
Hey, Jess.
Hi, Ness.
Hi. Corinna, from your experience, let's talk about how organizations can be data mature for AI ready. A lot of organizations are struggling, and a lot of projects towards AI implementations are failing as well. Study shows nearly 80% of all AI initiatives are failing. That's a huge number. And I was talking to former chairman of PMI, Antonio, uh, and he claimed that a lot of those initiatives are not projects; those are only experiments. Means organizations are learning, they don't know what they're doing, and they're thinking okay, if it is implemented correctly, yeah, they can scale on top of that. You working with a lot of your clients on data readiness, data cleansing, what is your experience about data maturity and companies' AI implementation from the responsibility standpoint?
I think it has a lot to do what you're seeing with what I call like the digital debt that a lot of companies have been carrying for years. And that is when, I don't know, in 2015, the buzzword was not AI yet, it was big data. It was also about companies failing at big data because they didn't have their data in order, right? It's not just cleaning or readiness, it's the entire end-to-end data journey that just wasn't implemented or even put down as a strategy. And a lot of workarounds are always put in place. Oh, we can invest in being more digital and data driven later. We have a couple spreadsheets here that are giving us what we need. And now AI is here. And I think with most companies, what I see is they don't even associate data anymore with AI, whereas data is the base of AI. AI is artificial intelligence, data is business intelligence. They're both highly interconnected, and all of these people that have not invested in the proper data architecture yet, they're the ones that you see failing. But I do agree. I mean, a lot of other companies that might already be at the data maturity point that you'd like them to be at, they're also failing because it's experiments. And in this culture of the entrepreneurs these days are always in the failure culture. You can only win if you fail a couple times. So in that regard, I support failure, especially in AI, because it's better than not even getting started looking into AI use cases,
Mhm.
right? But yeah, you're correct. There's a lot of data maturity issues that need to be addressed now.
I have learned from a study by Accenture in 2024, nearly like 2000 CXOs interviewed in that study. And they revealed that nearly half of the organization, less than half actually, they they don't feel like they have enough data. They don't feel like they have high quality data, so they cannot support AI transformation in a big way because they're struggling with the data.
Well,
Those numbers tell a story that those CXOs are the titles that we can only find in large organizations, and nearly half of those organizations are struggling with the data confidence, and obviously 80% of the AI initiatives will fail because they are not literally ready, and you work in that area to make them ready to increase their data confidence. What's the starting point for organizations to acknowledge and to fix that issue?
good question, especially for bigger companies. I think they have a different starting point. And that is in something what I call a very boring foundational thing, then that's an audit. Like, what systems do you have in place? Because when I come in for audits, there's not just one system somewhere. Every department could have their own system, database, or the way they handle data, or BI tools. I've seen companies with Tableau and Power BI, for example, for business intelligence insights, right? So you need to go down to the basics and find out what do we have already, because I'm sure there's a
Right.
lot. And then what do we actually need, right? How can we standardize this across the entire company? Because if you have data only flowing smoothly within the departments, then you're still not data mature. Then you're still missing the bigger picture on, when you can combine insights from across departments. And I would also challenge a little bit that study. I haven't read it. I don't know. But when it comes to the marketing department, I don't think they would say they don't have enough data. I think they would say we have a shit ton of data everywhere. And that's why they're typically the first that engage with me. They just don't know what to do with it, how to access it, how to clean it, how to trust it, really.
Yeah, it's the stitching, right? I think that's always the big problems for marketing, even customer experience team. But why do you think that it's become like that? Like what has led to this kind of a technical and even data overload from based on what you have observed? What have they gone wrong? Where have they gone wrong?
Right.
I think the overload itself is not necessarily wrong. It's just that marketing has accumulated a lot of tools over the years, and every tool you have accumulates data automatically, whether you want it or not, right? There's just a lot of data in it. And every time you buy a new tool to handle a different aspect of your marketing, you add more data. And it becomes increasingly more difficult to marry all of that data back together, especially if some of the tools start overlapping. You buying it because it also does some of the things that your other tool already does, but it has this extra component, right? And then somebody starts looking at the data and they can't reconcile it. So the data overload, I don't think is a problem. It's a problem of how to handle it. And there's a lot of business intelligence depth, I think, because of what is expected of marketing. And I haven't really put my finger down on where it comes from, but I see it on LinkedIn, on my own profile. When recruiters reach out to me, they're like, "Oh, we need a marketing analyst." And then I go through the detailed description, and it doesn't list all of the marketing skills only, it also lists all of the data skills that I'm an expert for. And I'm always telling them, well, good luck. That's like a unicorn position. You need 2 degrees for that. You need a marketing degree and you need like a data science degree, right? But I do think that in a lot of companies, that's what's expected of the marketing team, to be able to handle the data that they have. And I think that's where maybe education has to begin, that, their job is marketing and data analysis might not be their strong suit. That might not be what, the entire journey of how to get to the analysis part. That is so much work that happens in the shadows of IT, as I call it. Like you see the analysis is like the top of the iceberg. That's, I don't know, 10% or whatever it is. And the rest, a lot of organizations are not even aware of.
You mentioned the teams think like, okay, let's get to another service and it might help a little bit more on some dimension and direction. How often do you see these kind of decisions they make on the tech stack? And also one more question around it, like how often do you see like people are not even clear about the tech stack they already have? We have discussed in the past, Jess and I had a bunch of conversations around companies don't even know very clearly what they already have. So they keep buying more services. How often do you see the problem?
Probably 99% of the time. I'm just talking to a client right now. Well, they're still in the prospect stage, but they have had Marketo for the longest time. And Marketo is like an email marketing tool, but it is a little bit different from its competitors. And it's this highly tech and data mature tool that requires a lot of consultants or a lot of in-house hires to even keep going. So they want to move off and they've decided to go to HubSpot,
Hmm.
but they also have Salesforce, like the entire Salesforce suite.
These are big elephant tools. All these are big elephant tools.
Not all of them, basically. And so even the migration part is going to take at least 6 months now. And there's a HubSpot agency working with me on that. They will tackle that. But that means they're actually going to run all of that in parallel, plus Salesforce, and then trying to integrate the data together to make sense of it. And I'm not even surprised. Like that just happens all the time. And it also, one of the reasons is that sometimes it's not just one department collecting more tools because they think they need this additional one component or functionality. It's the company sometimes introducing tools company-wide that every department has to adapt, even though maybe one or two might already have something very similar going, right? So
Mm.
that situation that like other way around can also happen, and I've seen that.
I mean, we talk so much about data. I think you brought up a point about the quality data, which is a very important point, right? It's not so much about just the volume of data, but to make sure that it's quality. So then ultimately, who do you think should be accountable for the data source and also the whether the data is of a good quality or not, and also whether it's unbiased data? Who actually owns this data governance from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot to uncover. Let's go maybe from one part to the next. The first one was like the clean data, right? I think that's everybody's responsibility. Anybody who touches a tool, which what you would call a data source, right? They need to ensure that they follow company standards. And that brings us to the second one, the bias. I think if you say bias, we're thinking AI these days very quickly. But for me, bias means it's a part of the company culture that needs to be thought of, strategized, and then rolled out to all of the departments, right? And so that is what actually defines the standards. It defines how you're dealing with data so that it is comparable company wide. And that must live in the C suite. And that is, I mean, for bigger companies, that would be the CDO. So the chief data officer, these days they're often combined with AI. So it's like a CDAIO. That's quite a mouthful. So that's where the strategy part needs to come from and the rollout. And it also has a lot to do with change management. So it would be wise to bring in a change management expert because the CDO is not it's not typically, the expert on that field. But if you think about the bigger companies, they've been running on Excel sheets, on everybody doing their own thing, using their own tools for so many years that standardizing and bringing the whole company to the same page on a data level does require change management.
This is the powerful one. I agree with the change management. Leadership gotta get involved, get their hands dirty into implementing all this just by forcing to teams that, hey, here's the data, clean it and make it AI ready. It's not gonna happen. That it's better said than done. Yeah, you're right on the change management on top of everything else like governance and then processes and like culture and mindset. All those things are important here. For this, like, let's talk about future ready of like, okay, now let's say we have AI going on and our organizations are automated and all this. And where do you see the governance will also be AI driven at some point, or governance has to be done the way it is being done right now to sit on top of AI, and how to keep the balance between control and the outcome, okay, and the execution, like the innovations and strategy and control over everything else, like this, um, towards data in the AI world. I mean, how do you predict that organizations will work like when AI is settled and had been like stable into organizations ecosystem? How do you see governance should be planned for that?
Why don't we start from the top this time? So AI governance, right? AI is the highest level of data, anything in the company. That is really clear to me. You can't just let AI run wild, set it up once and forget about it. It is like any other architecture you implement, you have to constantly monitor it and control it. And that is not just as simple as controlling accesses to what it can read or cannot read. It's also things that most people probably don't even think about yet. And that is if you implement something and it starts running, there are two main things that can happen with AI. One is called the model drift. So whatever results you get by testing it today might not what you get in 6 months. And that is because models evolve, but also your own model
Mm.
evolves because not
Yeah.
static, right? It learns depending on how you've configured it. But you always need to monitor what is the model actually doing. Is it still getting us the same results that we're expecting it to get? So the monitoring is really, really important. I think bias goes in there too. Bias can also shift over time, and you need to be on top of that. So I find it very important. Governance still needs to be there. You can't just set it up once and then forget about it. And AI is like you super genius that you can ask any question any day. That's not the case. What I think will be actually more interesting, especially to me as a more data expert rather than an AI expert, is how AI can and will govern data and data governance. Because so far, data governance takes up a lot of time. Even just running an audit, the system audit, you're gonna pay a consultancy like many, many, many man days to do it, right? Then there's the data audit, which should, ideally happen like once a month per department on the department level to make sure that the data you cleaned is still clean. The standards you have in place are being followed, right? Things like, I don't know, permissions and controls people think about first because they're very important. They're about security and breaches and hacks online, right? But that is more something you set up once and then you have like alerts in place and it runs. But things like controlling the people and that they follow the rules, I think that's going to be more important. And I think AI can help and support what we are currently doing. Just think about it. I'm going back to marketing because I do a lot of marketing analytics. I just recently had a case where we're looking at ads, and in a bigger company, you have many people running ads, right? And let's make it really simple for this. They had a campaign called A, and or an ad called A, ad called B, and then for some reason, let's not get into the details, they just switched the names. So what was A was now B, and what was B is now A.
Changes the whole meaning of it.
So they didn't tell anybody about it, right? They were just in their own world because they're not data experts. They're just like, okay, so my experiment is done, and for whatever reason, I'm now renaming it, not thinking about the consequences down the line. And that goes all the way down to the AI because now you have inaccurate data at the source.
Yeah.
Confusion too, because you're actually mixing up historical data with fresh data, right? So human governance is still going to be key, I think. And I might actually be really good for that.
This example is valid, but at scale, for the external impact, the cybersecurity organization that had their update file, a little bit of mistake in that file stopped almost the whole world. All airlines, hotels booking. If you remember that cybersecurity organization, I won't use the name here, but that little mistake on the definition files, little flat file, like corrupted the whole system and stopped half of the world on that, because that tool was being used at like almost every organization. Yeah. So again, like organizations should know what the basics are and how those are set.
Well,
Look at the bigger picture, garbage in, garbage out, right? Like, so this garbage in, garbage out, in order to avoid this situation, the input has to be accurate and the flow should be also verified so that they can expect the results they're looking for.
yeah, and that's I think where the change management comes in, right? Because garbage in, garbage out is quite widely recognized now, I think, among people that talk about business intelligence. But as the minion, the lowest level of a department, you're like, but I don't produce garbage. I put in hard work every day, right? And that is true. They don't produce garbage. They are left to their own devices, making up whatever. Simple things like naming conventions, not using drop downs, but text fields. It's not because they're stupid or, lazy. It's because they have no governance that tells them, okay, this is how you need to do it. I think that's going to be important because otherwise you're not going to pick up the people on the lowest levels that are actually crucial for clean and accurate data.
I guess it's a kind of immaturity in itself, right? The lower levels, it's not like you said, they're not stupid, but if they don't have that taxonomy from the top
Yeah.
down, they won't be able to do what's right. Which again, I think you brought up a point about the CDAIO potentially governing data. But then would you say that the CDAIO versus the tech, there's a bit of a conflict when it comes to AI governance? Would you foresee that? Because there's always a power struggle between tech and everyone else.
I would actually say yes and no. Um, it really depends on the product, right? If the product is deeply involved, because that's what a CTO to me is. they will overlap in terms of architecture that's being built, like business intelligence, data architecture is very closely interlinked with the other architecture that the CTO needs for product. So if the product is very AI heavy, or they're selling AI, then yes, there need to be clear boundaries, especially when it comes to responsibilities and who gives the shots here. Like, who says, okay, we're doing it this way, right? That probably needs to come from CEO or from, I don't know, the board altogether. I have no idea. I never thought about that, to be honest. But when it's not crazy AI heavy, and we're talking more about the use cases, the ones that are failing right now, just trying to implement AI into the company, I think that's when it should stay in the CIO role, and product and or the CTO should just continue focusing on product and basically be a customer to the CIO if they need an AI product, like a smaller, we usually call it data products. I don't know if they now call it an AI product. Right? So become the customer of the data infrastructure for that. That's where I can see the differences.
I like your analogy about data govern and govern the data. So this cycle is actually gives us different layers of data governance. So like all the way from data inputs should be validated, and then how to process the data, save, cleanse, manage, and dedupe. Everything is done under governance, and then what's coming out should also be like verified, and then the whole ecosystem. I mean, I like that analogy, and it is very helpful for leaders to be aware of. It's not just once data is in, then it starts. It's like from all the way from data designing to processing, and then utilization of that same.
Yeah, 100%.
You talk a lot about change management. So actually in your role, are you expected to help them with their change management strategy?
No, not at all. Not at all. And that's maybe, I don't know if it's because I work for more mid-sized companies, so they're smaller to begin with, more eight figures realm, or if it's because of the nature of what they think about. When they think about data, they think about tech, maybe even the IT department, which has absolutely nothing to do really with data. And so I'm always at the beginning more like that techie girl that they can, throw tickets at, or just some requirements. And I have to bring it back to the business analysis level and say, look, first we need to do a little bit of strategy work. What is it you're actually trying to accomplish? What are your business questions? And that in itself is already a struggle but it's very important. So I always have to do that when I go in. So going from that to change management is very, very hard. I do it personally indirectly by how I talk and how I phrase it when I have stakeholder interviews. And that goes not just on the C-suite level, but also on the manager level. So when I go to them and I figure out, okay, what are your actually business questions? What do you need to know? Right? Then I understand that if I give them the answers to that and not the metrics they're asking for, then by nature of solving that problem, they will accept the new system, right? When it comes to tools, that's where the audit, I think, is crucial. If you have a bigger company and you go in and the CEO says, Corinna, run an audit on the systems, and you have, for example, that crazy scenario where some departments are using Power BI, for example, and some are using Tableau, well, they're going to be so married to these two systems, like each individually, they'll have a hard time switching out of it. So if you show what the audit shows, what makes sense to the business, I think that would be my angle on how to tell the one team that, that tool was decided against, why we're now switching. But then at the same time, as, the techie person, I would offer help, right? I'm there to support the transition. But more than that, I'm afraid change management is a big beast, and it's above my pay grade.
Wow, wonderful. Yeah, thanks, Corinna. Thanks a lot for your insights, valuable inputs, and really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Well, anytime. Same here. Thanks for hosting.
Thanks, Corinna. Great insights.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap on this episode. We hope you are walking away with at least one battle-tested strategy you can apply to your own digital journey today. This show is built for leaders like you who are tired of the fluff and ready for real solutions. If you found value in this discussion today, please subscribe to the channel and leave us a review. It helps us bring more world-class leaders to the table. Also, feel free to share this episode with a colleague who is navigating these same digital trenches. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.